Okay, good evening, fellow Islanders. An update here tonight. We have with us on a Skype call is the Premier. We have Minister Thompson and we have Dr. Morrison. So we're going to start right away and go right to the Premier.
Well, thank you very much, Stephen, and thank you everyone for joining us here tonight. Surprisingly, we are only formally in the second week of COVID-19 pandemic here in Prince Edward Island, although it does feel like much longer. I know there has been a lot of information that has been shared, and I know that Islanders, for the most part, are listening. And while I'm proud of that, I do recognize that we are still seeing instances, far too many, in our communities where Islanders are not doing what is required and what is required of them right now. Dr. Morrison has been very clear in her ask of Islanders. She and her staff are working around the clock, along with so many essential service workers, to keep Islanders safe and to support us as we navigate the difficult times in this unprecedented situation that is COVID-19. We all need to listen to her advice, to self-isolate if you've traveled outside of Prince Edward Island, to practice social distancing, to stay home unless you need to travel to access an essential service. Last week, I declared the state of public health emergency. That meant giving Dr. Morrison the authority she needs under the Public Health Act to do what needs to be done to protect P.E.I. Today, we authorized at Cabinet that under the same piece of legislation, Dr. Morrison will have the flexibility to issue orders based on the health directives that she has given concerning self-isolation. There will be strict fines for those who do not comply with these directives, and law enforcement will have the authority to issue these fines starting today. The message is plain and it's simple. Stay home unless, to stop the spread of COVID-19. My colleague, Minister Thompson, will provide more detail to the extent of these measures and as well as an update on public safety in a few moments. I just want to take this time to say that it's important to note that the additional screening measures that we have put in place at the entry points of our province are going well. We have a team of public health professionals at the Confederation Bridge 24/7. They are providing additional screening measures and notifying everyone returning to the island that they are required to self-isolate when returning to the province. In addition, public health teams will be present at the Surrey Ferry Terminal and the Charlottetown Airport when there is a scheduled arrival from out of province. These measures that are in place are not options, they are required and they need to be followed. As well, earlier today, I spoke with Mona O'Shea, the president of the P.E.I. Nurses Union. I reiterated to Mona the important role that nurses play and all healthcare professionals play and will continue to play in the days, weeks, and months ahead as we work through this situation. We agreed that we need to work together to keep those frontline workers safe, and a big part of that safety is based on ensuring our frontline staff have the proper personal protective equipment. So to that extent, we have established a special task force to assist Health P.E.I. in procuring additional personal protective equipment for our healthcare workers. They will work with local, regional, national, and international suppliers to secure an adequate supply of this necessary equipment. In addition, we have seen P.E.I.-based businesses offering their supports. We have distilleries making hand sanitizers, and I believe that this is just the beginning. Many others are eager to help, and you will see them with the opportunity to help. And we want those innovative ideas in the days ahead to work with us to help prevent and to do everything we can to prevent the spread of COVID-19 in this province. For those healthcare professionals that are on the front lines fighting COVID-19 every day, let me be clear that our team is working night and day to get you the resources to keep you safe so that you can provide the necessary service that Islanders have come to rely on. As well, finally, that later this evening, I'll be joining a call with the Prime Minister and my fellow premiers to discuss the state of this issue from a Canadian-wide perspective. On this call, I will take the time again to get the confirmation I've been asking for the last couple of weeks so that Islanders who are on E.I. or will be looking to access employment insurance, that the money we are trying to get into their hands immediately right now to get them through these difficult times will not be clawed back. We want to be able to ensure there is a stacking of support programs with our federal partners that will only benefit Islanders from tip to tip. So I will be looking forward to bringing back some information based on that. We want Islanders to be able to pay their bills, to live, and to get through this most difficult time. And finally, Stephen, before I turn it back, I just want to be clear once again that COVID-19 is serious, it's deadly. The numbers that we are seeing around the world, around the globe, are shocking, and we have to do our part here in Prince Edward Island. This is a province that prides itself on doing everything that it can to help friends and neighbors. And the best thing we can do to help our friends and neighbors right now is to stay home, to self-isolate, and to do everything we can and to follow the orders coming from Dr. Morrison to help us get through this. So as a government, we're taking these measures very seriously, and we continue to ask for the support of all Islanders in this most difficult time. So thank you, Stephen.
All right, thank you, Premier, for your update, and we will have questions at the end, but now we'll move over to Minister Thompson for his remarks.
Good afternoon, and thank you, Mr. Premier. The last few weeks have been difficult for everyone. I appreciate everyone's patience as we go through this together. Every day, Dr. Morrison has come out with updates and stronger recommendations. That means self-isolating if you have traveled outside the province and internationally. That means practicing social distancing. These are all things that we have been asked to do so that we can do our part. She stressed that today we will have direct impact on how successful we are in the weeks and months to come. I want to thank everyone who has listened. I'm bringing this up today, not for those who are doing their part, but for Islanders who can do better. I know you can and will do better. Other provinces have started to increase enforcement procedures related to needing to self-isolate. If necessary, for those not self-isolating, you can be fined $1,000 for first time, $2,000 for second time, $10,000 third time, and every time after. This may apply to individuals who own businesses that do not comply with Dr. Morrison's order. If you know someone who is not self-isolating, do not call 911. Call 1-800-958-6400. So I want to remind Islanders that what Dr. Morrison is saying, that it is not because it's nice to do, it's because it's what we need to do. We have the duty to do our part. So I remind all Islanders that the time is now, not tomorrow, not the day after, it's now. Let's be responsible. If you have to go out for errands, name one person from your home to do it. When you go out, you still have to practice social distancing. If you're helping a neighbor, thank you, but please do it safely. When you're going out for fresh air, remember to practice social distancing. Listen to Dr. Morrison. This may sound strict, but these are the new realities. I know these are tough times, but remember, Islanders are tough too. Please stay home. I've already heard many examples of Islanders stepping up. That's what Premier King has said is the Island way. Let's use common sense and do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister Thompson. We'll turn it over to Dr. Morrison.
Thank you, Premier, Ministers. We're seeing the number of COVID-19 cases rise across the country every single day. And here in P.E.I, we've seen the 3 cases over just the last week. In other areas of the country and across the world, we are starting to see cases of community spread. Over the last number of weeks, I've been reminding Islanders, as many others have been, about the importance of self-isolating and social distancing. I've been advising that all those traveling within Canada, as well as those who have traveled internationally, self-isolate for 14 days. I've tried to explain what social distancing means and why it is critical during this time to distance yourself physically from others. I have and I will continue to reiterate that these measures are key pieces in efforts to flatten the curve and reduce the spread of COVID-19 here in our province. And yet, we continue to receive feedback from the public of people who may not be taking this advice seriously. Ignoring these public health measures is irresponsible and puts you, your loved ones, and our community at risk, especially for those who are most vulnerable in our communities. These measures are challenging to do, hard to implement, and I want and need Islanders to listen and protect one another. I know we all want to get back to life as usual, and we all do. But if we don't act accordingly now, getting back to normal will be farther and farther away. I want to thank Islanders who are and have been complying with social distancing and self-isolating themselves if needed. Reducing the spread of COVID-19 is a shared responsibility, and I urge all of us to take that responsibility very seriously. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Morrison. Now, I understand we have a number of media people on the phones here, so we'll open up the floor to media.
Stu Neatby from The Guardian. Question for Minister Thompson. Wanted to make sure I'm clear on exactly what the fines were for. Are these for people violating the provisions of self-isolation or social distancing, or both?
Self-isolating through the Dr. Morrison's order.
Wayne Thibodeau here at CBC. Premier King, I'm wondering if you might be able to speak to the fact that you had to go to this measure. As you mentioned, Islanders seem to always want to do their part, but we're all hearing these stories of those who are not following the rules. Does this disappoint you that you have to take these measures today?
Well, I think it is part of the new reality. I think Dr. Morrison and I and many others have been talking for the last number of days and probably had a desire or a hope not to get to here. But we do hear of these cases all the time. And look, I understand the frustration and the unknowns out there. These are new terms. We talk about this all the time. Self-isolation, social distancing. These are new terms that haven't been part of our everyday language, but have cropped up in these last 10 days to 2 weeks. And people are starting to learn what they mean. But look, I can relate to a certain degree. I'm under day 10 of self-isolation. When I talked to Dr. Morrison about having to do this, I had the same questions many Islanders would have. I don't feel any symptoms. I don't feel I interacted anywhere that I could have symptoms. But Dr. Morrison is adamant in the research and the conversation she's having at the national level that the best thing that I can do to help others is to self-isolate, to follow those directions. And I could be unknowingly, passing this on, and that's the last thing that I want to do. So I understand why Islanders are frustrated. I wish we didn't have to get to here, but if you look around our jurisdictions across the country, we are all getting to there because simply we just need everyone to know that they have to take this seriously and they have to do their part.
And if I could follow up that message with Minister Thompson, obviously police agencies, like every other group and organization, I guess, is challenged by COVID-19. How well equipped are they to deal with these new provisions, and how will this actually work in reality? Are we expecting people to call the 1-800 line, or will police agencies be going out to check on individuals who are supposed to be self-isolating? How is that going to work?
Thank you, Wayne. Dr. Morrison had a conversation with the police chiefs today, I believe, and for an understanding that this would take place and that they are ready for this, and it's business as usual for them, and they are prepared for this. And it's unfortunate we have to go this route, but there's been a lot of people calling in already that the last few days reporting this, so we feel we had to take this route.
So police officers will literally be checking on people in their homes, those who have been, their tips have been given that they haven't been following the self-isolation orders.
Wayne, I may just certainly, what I think is important, I think most people, the first step is a conversation about what self-isolation means and how important it is. And it's, and usually that will be enough, or it will almost serve as a warning. And then if we, and that's where I think our police services, RCMP and police across the province, if it's needed and they need to have a warning or be called in for warning or further discussion or interventions, then that would be the next step. So I think it's a tool to help make sure that somebody doesn't put others at risk, and especially if they understand what self-isolation is and they are blatantly ignoring that information and that guidance. And so that is why Prince Edward Island and many other provinces have variations of making sure that they have this ability to, and these are provisions that are in the Public Health Act that we only want to use if necessary. It is a balanced use of authority, and I talked about that earlier, and but it is all in the interest of the health and the safety of Islanders.
And Dr. Morrison, just while we have you in the shot, if I could just ask you, and I know this came up today, but I must admit I'm not completely clear. The Premier mentioned that we're working day and night to secure additional protective equipment. What is the situation on the front lines now? Do we have enough masks? Do we have enough equipment right now on the front lines? And I know there's been some discussion that following H1N1, we were supposed to have a stockpile of this. There's some suggestion that that stockpile doesn't exist. Can you talk to those issues, please?
Well, I think, Wayne, Marion Dowling, I think, spoke to some of those questions earlier, and I think maybe it would be more appropriate to address some of that again tomorrow, and because I actually don't have that information in front of me in terms of the personal protective equipment, but from Marion Dowling's earlier comments, I think P.E.I, Health P.E.I, and the government at different levels are trying to make sure there's currently enough supply, but also in it for the weeks ahead.
Thank you.
Dr. Morrison, en français, pourquoi en êtes-vous arrivé au besoin de mettre des amendes? Et répondez-nous aussi un peu à la question de Wayne en français, s'il vous plaît. Celle sur les amendes avec la police, s'il vous plaît.
OK, bonjour. En premier, on est en train depuis des semaines, en train de parler aux insulaires ici à l'île du Prince-Édouard à propos de l'importance d'avoir la distance sociale, mais aussi de l'importance d'auto-isolation et si on fait ça maintenant, ça va nous aider comme province, comme en communauté dans les semaines et mois qui suivent. Et puis, la plupart des gens, la plupart des insulaires ici respectent cette direction. Mais de plus en plus, on entend qu'il y a des gens, peut-être qu'ils ne comprennent pas, mais on va les essayer de donner l'information et puis s'ils ne respectent pas les instructions, on peut avoir l'aide des services policiers pour s'assurer qu'il ne met pas les autres insulaires à risque à l'île du Prince-Édouard. Et je pense que c'est important et on fait ça en ligne avec les autres provinces et territoires pour être certain que les insulaires ici sont protectés. Deuxième question est à propos de l'équipement pour nous protéger, pour les personnes qui travaillent aux hôpitaux et à Health P.E.I. Et puis, je pense que je vous répondrai plus demain. C'était Marion Darling qui a répondu plus tôt cet après-midi que le Health P.E.I. et puis le gouvernement travaillent ensemble pour essayer d'assurer qu'il y a un assez d'équipement pour maintenant, mais aussi pour les semaines qui suivent.
Docteur Morrison, comment allez-vous faire avec la police pour s'assurer que les gens respectent l'auto-isolement? Est-ce que vous allez envoyer la police frapper chez les gens, au domicile des gens?
On va commencer plutôt par un appel et puis si on a besoin, les services policiers vont nous aider à aller parler avec quelqu'un et on veut s'assurer en premier qu'il comprend, qu'il met les autres en risque et eux aussi. Alors, c'est pas quelque chose qu'on fait souvent. Et alors, on va apprendre beaucoup de choses dans les jours qui suivent. Mais comme le premier ministre King a mentionné, on est fiers des insulaires. On sait que les insulaires veulent protéger l'un et les autres. Et aujourd'hui, c'est vraiment les détails d'une annonce qu'on espère qu'on ne doit pas utiliser tellement, mais si on a besoin, on peut.
Last question, I'm sorry. Question for you, Premier. Did you already speak about the situation of the Magdalene Island with the Premier logo or not yet? And what do you have to say on this? Do you will continue to let the people from the Magdalene to use the boat and to drive on P.E.I, cross P.E.I?
I spoke just briefly today with Premier Legault, and we agreed to connect after our call tonight with the Prime Minister. I wanted to get the sense of how things were going in his province pertaining to Ile de la Madeleine. We wanted to ensure that there is a steady supply of the supply chain going to his province, to that island through our ferry in Surrey. But we have to have a more fuller discussion after the meeting tonight, and we have agreed to do that. Like we're trying to do with New Brunswick, who connects with our Confederation Bridge, we want to make sure we're in as much coordination as is possible with our provincial our counterparts. So I should have more to add to that conversation tomorrow after Premier Legault and I have our full chat this evening.
Thank you.
Stu Neepy with The Guardian. Just one other, one more question for Minister Thompson. I've gotten quite a bit of feedback from parents who are basically in a situation of shared custody. And this could perhaps be a question for Ms. Morrison as well. Is there any kind of protocol of how parents should handle a joint or a shared custody arrangement, I guess, when it comes to children being involved, either when it comes to self-isolation or social distancing? Are there any best practices or advice that Justice and Public Safety will be issuing?
I'll let Dr. Morrison respond to this.
Hi, Stu. So just to comment that we have had conversations with Family and Social Services and those responsible, and so our office has connected with some advice, and we have been getting questions, as you mentioned, with different scenarios and parents with questions, and they are being referred to, through a particular person, and we've been giving some advice. So I think every situation is a bit unique, but we're trying to make sure that we balance the measures to protect the children and the adults and the others in the community.
Okay. And just one more question, I guess I'll direct this to Premier King. So, I mean, obviously, you know, we have kind of the more enforcement piece tonight, but during a previous briefing on Friday, we were told that we would hear a little bit more about the program, the $250 per week for individuals who are not eligible for E.I. I mean, considering that, you know, there is a lot of economic pain being felt by workers here in Prince Edward Island, when will we hear more details about this program and when people, you know, might expect a check from it?
Well, we had initially intended that to occur today. There's a couple of things that have come up that we needed Minister McKay and his crew to address a couple of questions, but he will be in a position tomorrow to outline that and some other programs that we have been working on. You're exactly right, though. The immediacy of getting money into the hands of Islanders remains a priority for us. Our money has started to roll out the door already, and Minister McKay will have a more fulsome update tomorrow in that regard, and in particular that program that you've identified, Stu.
Thank you.
Okay, so that pretty well wraps it up. I want to thank Dr. Morrison for being here, Minister Thompson, and of course the Premier for making these announcements tonight, and for all those that tuned in to watch and to share our message. Thank you, and stay safe.